The pounding on my front door came just before dawn, so frantic that I thought someone had been hurt. When I pulled it open, my neighbor stood there trembling, barefoot on the cold porch, her face streaked with tears, clutching nothing but a faded sweater wrapped around her shoulders. She looked at me with the kind of fear that doesn't come from the dark, it comes from living too long without hope. Then, with a voice barely stronger than a whisper, she asked if she could borrow my courage because she had run out of her own. If you believe kindness can save a life, forgiveness can heal wounds, hope can change a future, and second chances are worth fighting for, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community that believes compassion still matters. The sun had only begun to color the morning sky when Rowan stepped inside my small home. The first rays of daylight spilled across the hardwood floor, making everything feel strangely peaceful despite the storm raging inside her. She kept apologizing for arriving so early, but I could barely focus on the words because her feet were scraped and bruised, and every movement suggested she had been carrying invisible weight for years. I had lived next door to Rowan for almost 4 years. We exchanged polite waves while collecting the mail, smiled during neighborhood cookouts, and occasionally helped each other carry groceries. She always appeared calm, organized, and independent. I had never imagined she was hiding a life built on fear. As the morning brightened, I cleaned the cuts on her feet while she sat silently at my kitchen table. The silence stretched between us, heavy but strangely comforting. Finally, she admitted that she had spent years convincing herself she could survive one more difficult day. One more apology. One more promise that things would change. One more excuse. She had become so skilled at pretending everything was fine that she almost believed it herself. But that morning, while watching sunlight break through her bedroom window, she realized she could no longer mistake surviving for living. She confessed that she had packed nothing because leaving had happened in a single desperate moment. She had walked away with only the clothes she was wearing. Halfway across the yard she realized she had forgotten her shoes, yet she kept walking because she feared that turning back, even for a few seconds, would steal away the courage she had finally found. Her words settled deep inside me because I understood something she didn't. Courage is rarely loud. It doesn't always arrive with confidence. Sometimes courage looks exactly like a frightened person standing barefoot on a neighbor's porch while asking for help. The rest of the morning became a quiet mission. I found an old pair of comfortable sneakers that belonged to my late sister. They fit Rowan almost perfectly. We shared breakfast while making a list of practical steps instead of impossible dreams. We contacted people who could provide support, arranged temporary housing, and gathered important information she would need. Every completed task seemed tiny, but together they built something much stronger than either of us expected. They built momentum. Over the following days, our neighborhood noticed Rowan's absence from her own house. Rumors traveled faster than facts, as they often do in quiet communities. Some neighbors guessed she was visiting family. Others assumed she had gone on vacation. Only a handful knew the truth, and they protected her privacy without hesitation. Their kindness reminded me that communities are strongest not when everyone knows someone struggles but when everyone respects someone's healing. Rowan struggled constantly with guilt. She worried she had inconvenienced everyone around her. She believed asking for help made her weak. Every afternoon, while we walked through the nearby park beneath bright blue skies, she repeated that she should have handled everything herself. I gently reminded her that nobody criticizes someone for accepting a lifeline while drowning. Emotional storms deserve the same compassion as physical ones. One sunny afternoon we visited a local community center that offered counseling and support. Rowan hesitated outside the entrance for several minutes. The building itself wasn't frightening. What terrified her was admitting she deserved help. She had spent so many years believing her own happiness mattered less than everyone else's that stepping through those doors felt like breaking a lifelong rule. She eventually walked inside. That single step became the beginning of a completely different future. Healing, however, refused to follow a straight path. Some mornings Rowan laughed while drinking coffee on my porch, speaking excitedly about finding work and rebuilding her life. Other mornings she stared quietly into the distance, convinced she had made a terrible mistake. Trauma has a cruel habit of making safety feel unfamiliar. She often mistook peace for uncertainty because chaos had become normal for so long. During those difficult moments, I stopped trying to solve every problem. Instead, I simply stayed beside her. I learned that people don't always need brilliant advice. Sometimes they only need someone willing to remain present while they rediscover themselves. Weeks turned into months. The bright afternoons gradually became symbols of progress. Rowan found a position at a neighborhood library where patience and kindness mattered more than perfection. Children adored her because she remembered every name, every favorite story, and every shy smile. Watching her read picture books beneath warm sunlight pouring through the library windows, I saw someone completely different from the frightened woman who had once believed she possessed no courage at all. One afternoon an elderly visitor quietly thanked Rowan for recommending a novel after losing his wife. He explained that reading had helped him survive lonely days. Rowan smiled through tears because she finally understood that broken people often become the gentlest healers. Her own pain had not disappeared, but it had transformed into compassion. Meanwhile, I experienced unexpected changes of my own. Helping Rowan forced me to confront how isolated I had allowed my own life to become after losing my sister years earlier. Grief had convinced me that staying emotionally distant would prevent future heartbreak. Yet opening my door to one frightened neighbor had quietly reopened my heart as well. Our friendship grew naturally. We celebrated ordinary victories that most people overlooked. Rowan signed the lease on a small apartment filled with sunlight. She planted flowers outside the front steps because she wanted every morning to begin with color instead of fear. She framed her first paycheck from the library, not because of the money, but because it represented independence she once believed impossible. Months later our neighborhood organized its annual daytime picnic in the park. Families gathered beneath large trees while children chased one another across open fields. Music drifted through warm afternoon air, and tables overflowed with homemade food. Rowan volunteered to coordinate the event. Watching her confidently welcome newcomers, I struggled to reconcile this vibrant woman with the trembling figure who had once stood barefoot on my porch. Near the end of the celebration, Rowan asked if she could share a few words with everyone. The crowd grew quiet. She spoke honestly about how easy it is to hide pain behind polite smiles. She admitted that many people had mistaken her silence for strength when, in reality, she had been desperately hoping someone would notice she was struggling. She thanked every person who had respected her privacy while still offering kindness. Then she surprised everyone by turning toward me. Without revealing painful details, she explained that there are moments in life when people don't need heroes. They simply need one person willing to answer the door. I felt every eye in the park turn toward me, but I shook my head gently because the truth was much bigger than one neighbor helping another. Afterward, several people quietly approached Rowan to share their own hidden battles. One had been caring for an ill parent alone. Another admitted to overwhelming loneliness after retirement. Someone else confessed they had nearly given up hope following a painful divorce. Rowan listened to every story with remarkable patience because she understood something many never learn. The strongest communities are not built by perfect people. They are built by honest people who refuse to let one another suffer alone. Later that afternoon, as golden sunlight stretched across the grass, Rowan handed me a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside rested the old pair of sneakers I had loaned her months before. They had been carefully cleaned until they looked almost new. Tucked beneath them was a handwritten note explaining that courage could never truly be borrowed because it already lives inside us. Sometimes another person simply reminds us where to find it. I couldn't hold back my tears. Those worn shoes had carried her away from fear and toward freedom. They had become proof that even the smallest acts of generosity can alter the course of an entire life. Years passed, and our neighborhood welcomed many new families. Rowan continued working at the library, eventually organizing literacy programs for children and adults alike. Whenever someone felt overwhelmed or uncertain, they somehow found themselves sitting across from Rowan, who listened with quiet understanding instead of judgment. She never claimed to have all the answers. She simply offered the same gift she had once received, unwavering presence. Her story spread quietly, not through headlines or dramatic speeches, but through everyday acts of kindness that inspired others to care more deeply for those around them. I often thought back to that early morning when she believed she was asking to borrow my courage. She never realized the truth. She had reminded me that courage multiplies whenever it is shared. If one frightened knock on a neighbor's door could change 2 lives, imagine what compassion offered freely every day could do for an entire community. Before this story comes to an end, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us about a time when someone else's kindness gave you the strength to keep moving forward, or when you found the courage to help someone who needed hope. As the years rolled on, Rowan often stood outside her little home in the bright afternoon sunshine, greeting neighbors with the same warm smile she once believed she would never wear again. Children waved as they rode their bicycles past her garden, older neighbors stopped to chat on their daily walks, and newcomers quickly discovered that the kind woman with the blooming flowers always had time to listen. The fear that had once defined her life became only a distant chapter, replaced by gratitude, purpose, and the quiet confidence that comes from surviving what once seemed impossible. I learned that courage isn't something we own or lose forever. It grows each time we choose compassion over indifference, hope over despair, and connection over isolation. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't rescuing someone from their darkest day. Sometimes it's simply opening the door, inviting them into the light, and reminding them that they never have to walk barefoot through life's hardest journey alone. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that even the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of someone else's new life, and that the courage we give away is often the courage that changes the world.